Welcome to another discussion between Richard and Michelle. We have no idea where we're going to go. But we started off with, um, well, Richard was telling me about a book that he's reading, Butterflies Are Free. Is that what I'm right?
Mhm.
Um, and we have now landed on the possibility, or the most likely possibility, that there is no self. Yeah, what if? Um, these choices are just influenced. We're talking about connection this month. We in the foundation of self, and so this all fits really well within the main theme in my own head. It's not the
Mhm.
main theme anywhere else, really. Mostly in my head and at the Wisdom Seekers. But yeah, we're talking about connection and potential and this fear of missing out, and what if I don't live up to my potential, or, I must work harder. I must, just not miss that thing. Yeah. Sorry, Richard, I kind of interrupted you to bring us into, yeah.
All good because so much of this fear of missing out, and actually we had this discussion on something. What if you could say something to yourself? What would it be? And the words came to me that you've always been enough.
Mm,
Through whatever we've done, we've always been enough, and we're told we're not. We're told we're not enough this, not enough that. We haven't got we need more self-worth, more self-esteem, more self-direction, and all these things, right? And so we said, what if the self is really a mirage? Or it's our divine self that's just waiting for us to connect to it. Because we said earlier in the sense that so many things we have to go somewhere, we have to do something, especially if we look at our path, we have to, we have to go to heaven, or we have to, well, what if you just become it? There is no
mm,
place to go. We think we have to travel. The journey's in here, in
yeah.
our choices of our perception.
Mm,
And when you think of this, the book said, what if there is no self? And like I said, I spent 2 weeks kind of in this pause, like, wow, it almost like this whole weight dropped off my shoulders
hmm
in this self that we've been so-called claimed that we have to define and make it better and do all these things and constantly fix and heal thyself and so
Yeah.
much that isn't allowing us to be.
Yeah. And we had it must have been 2 weeks ago now, when we had a telephone conversation because there was an issue with the internet, but we kind of
Mhm.
touched on this in essence as well. We're doing the Alchemist this season in the Wisdom Seeker, and that's a very similar thing for me. It's that the journey that brings you back home. The treasure is at home, the gold is at home. And for me, looking at that journey, that hero's journey as such, from a an alchemical perspective, turning lead into gold, it's already there. We're breaking it down. One of those first processes in that alchemical process is to let go of, as such, the self in essence, because it's breaking it down into something that no longer exists for it to transform as such. But it's not becoming, it's just it's revisiting, it's showing up differently, but in the same space. Similarly to looking at it from a Jungian perspective of individuation, it's not you becoming separate from. And I think this is the thing that I have such an issue with the Western culture of the individual. I must be successful. I've been on a maybe a little bit of an obsessive look at this Benito. Bad Bunny is his stage name as such. But what a gorgeous way of looking at not fighting this oppressive system, but rather combining and going, hang on a minute, America isn't like this little piece of states in the middle of a bigger picture. It's like it's this whole celebratory culture from Canada to the bottom of South America and involving these islands, you know. So suddenly it becomes a no, don't look at me, I'm better than you. It's a look at the collective, you know, that Ubuntu, I am because we are. No, and yet there is no I, because if we are, then there is no separation of self unless there's connection to the bigger picture, whether it is that divine self or whether it is nature, you know, any of that.
What comes to mind, and hope this fits in, there's a movie come out in 2012 called The Economics of Happiness.
Mm,
And the woman, I think she was a Swedish lady, it's on one of the YouTubes now, spent 30 years in the upper Asian, Siberian areas where the culture there was literally thousands of years old. And there was joy, there was happiness. Everybody had their identity, but everybody was part of the collective because no one was overlooked. And everybody from whatever background they were was an integral part of the system.
hmm
But when big business came in, put in their industrial roads and commercialism, suddenly you had unemployment, people didn't need their goods, you had drugs, you had all kinds of things. And then the comparison, because now you're being compared to a global identity. I'm
hmm
not enough.
Yeah.
So it's always been to draw you out and say, a fear of missing out instead of being and not satisfied being integrated into communities. And it has its good and bad points. Some people are wanderers. Every community's got their wanderers. I'm a wanderer.
hmm
I didn't want to stay in my own community, and I think that's the right we all have to say, this is beautiful, but I'm choosing another experience. For many,
Yet it might not have been your community, you know, just because you were
yeah,
born
correct,
there.
correct.
Yeah. So
Good
there's
point.
a ready judgment for a lot of us. Oh, I didn't fit in, or I'm not like them. But maybe that's not where you were supposed to be. Maybe this is your journey, physical journey as well.
Yes. And to have that experience,
Yeah.
of saying, I recognize this, I'm choosing to travel.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's an experience to look for something else, to be a seeker. And sometimes, whether we find it or not, but maybe our journey is to be the seeker, to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
experiences. I'm seeing multiple things show up where somebody's, even back in the last 100 years, people just decided they wanted to go learn, and they spent 40 years riding their bicycle around Europe,
Yeah.
living very meagerly, but having this incredible life of experiences.
Yeah,
And
and that is the choice in the journey, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Even in this, The Alchemist, which I mean, I think most people have read it. It's one of the most, you know, translated and published in bought books. Um, and in that also, this is the journey of Santiago, where he's educated to become a priest of his village. He's you know all of this stuff, but he chooses not to have that experience. He chooses to have a bigger experience, and funnily enough, the only way you can do that is to be a shepherd to start
yeah,
with. So being that shepherd, which is almost a you know socially a lower rank as such as a priest
yes.
would be because he would
Mhm.
be a pillar of the community or whatever that you know in that aspect, but he chooses to experience the world his way. Not he might not have loved sheep yet, but he saw that as a way to be able to live the life that he chose. And then, you
Yes,
know, meeting Melchizedek, um, and and kind of experiencing this, ooh, there's a bigger world out there, which draws him because of who he is, where someone else would have been, the priest would have been his journey. You know what I mean?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. They would have accepted, but even at the end, you look when he had met that woman, and I think it was the tribal leader said, "No, you need to go find your reward." You
Yeah.
have to complete your journey because, and he told him what's going to happen in the 4 years if he stayed in that camp. He would have been acknowledged, but then he would have been eventually dissatisfied and dismissed because he wasn't being fulfilling to his own journey.
Yes. Yes. And that's a important aspect I think that we've forgotten as we're trying to fit in, as we're
Mhm.
trying to, you know, be part of this capitalist world that we're not necessarily driven by. Um, yeah, yeah. Because we still have that inner journey, that inner the soul's journey. Um, he talks about in the Alchemist as well as a personal legend, and I think that's what you kind of also bring
Mhm.
to the table here is to what is your personal legend. And I remember so well when Melchizedek, he was the king of Salem, and as he was kind of waving Santiago off, he thought he should have made a bigger impression on the boy, but then he said, "Gods don't have personal legends," So
Yes.
it's,
Yes.
and so that was not his place to make a bigger impression on the boy. So yeah, yeah.
So again, what he did was, and this comes out in my work with clients because he allowed the boy to have his own agency. He
Mm.
didn't give him directions or his determination. This is what you need to be because society, North America especially, tells us that you need to be this or you need to have this, and a lot of it is that they say is really pointless for many people who chose career paths and realized it was just a hollow path because you're just given titles and tasks, but there was like no fulfillment.
There's no you.
There's no you.
There's no you. As I say, I've been uh, really diving into this Benito's journey as well. 10 years ago, he was a cashier in a shop in Puerto Rico, and it, this last week he won the Best Album Grammy, first time ever in 68 years of the Grammy Awards that a Spanish album won Album of the Year, which is amazing. I mean, it is an achievement in this United States. I'm not even calling it America anymore because it's not America. America is much bigger than the United
Mm.
States.
Yeah.
Um, and and he had to make a big choice. I've read his story, 2016, 2017. He didn't have mainstream access really because he only sings in Spanish. He uploaded his songs to YouTube and SoundCloud and, became famous like that. I'm not going to go all through the whole thing, but then he was invited by a mainstream singer, I don't know her very well, Cardi B or something like that, and he sang a chorus on or lyrics on her album, and her song became number one. So he shot up in fame, and in that 2017, 2018, he was extremely unhappy. He was now very famous, um, you know, but it put him into a very dark place where he went home to Puerto Rico and he had to reassess what he was doing, and now his identity is locked in with his communities as Puerto Rican, which is bigger, part of this bigger America aspect. And it's about celebration and it's about community and it's about family and it's about playing dominoes with your grandfather and, things like that, which is him. Where the advice for him was always to, well, you're going to have to sing in English to be noticed because, Spanish
Yeah.
is not. But he said, no, that's not who I am. And he's still saying no. I've never watched or known anything about the Super Bowl. I don't understand American football. I don't know what but we went on YouTube and watched that halftime show and it was brilliant. The symbolisms and the things in that was amazing. And he is a live example for me of this journey, of I'm sure as a checkout boy or a cat, I think he was packing bags, possibly something like that, in this little shop in the village where he grew up. His dad was a truck driver, mom's a teacher. Um, that must have been his dream to be at the top of the US charts, the main charts, not and to live this life of fame. But then when he got there, as a lot of stories go, um, that was the low point for him. I mean, in the past week, he's just won a Grammy for the best album of the year. What's the word? He's been on a stage. Not They keep saying it's the biggest stage in the world. That's nonsense. It's a big platform. He has now been the most watched halftime show ever in the world. I think, and I might be wrong now, but it was something like 138 million people watched that 13-minute show that he put up. And it is beautiful. His theme was believe in yourself. That's it. And love is stronger than fear. That is his message. I mean, how amazing. And in his own language, which is spoken by many, many, many other people. Um, but it's not in English. It's not, there's this thing I read last night, um, you speak English because that's the only language you know. No, I speak English to you because that's the only language you know. But there's a difference in that. So sometimes Nelson Mandela said it best, if you want to speak to someone's heart, you speak in their own language. And this is what this symbolizes for me, and the message that I think we can kind of go with in believe in yourself. Doesn't matter if it is fitting in with the self that you being shown as, the I don't have it yet, or I mustn't miss my call, or I must just there's constant fear of living up to this potential, or yeah, guilt of maybe not. Yeah.
Well, I think so many people, especially in those industries, reach a level of success and realize how hollow it is because you're being managed, directed, given tasks, being, and sometimes with contracts, forced to go into these areas of, display.
Mm.
And you're just being, because you're being marketed, you're making money for other people.
Yeah.
And I think I can't think there's any a gentleman out of the Midwest who's really went the other way. He's done it all through his own methodology without the big supporters. He's got quite a following because he speaks his truth
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
connects people and he writes. So but again, he goes back to his home. He goes back to his family, his roots of comfort, and especially as for where my wife and I live in a Spanish culture, we live in Mexico, and we see the cultural support, the familia family support,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
acknowledgement, and I recognized that many years ago in Cuba that it's so rich
Mm.
and warm and friendly. And as long as I'm learning this language, so I'm working at trying to speak Spanish with them. They're so supportive,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Because
I
it means
was,
so much. It
it
means
does.
something. Yeah.
Huge, huge.
Mm.
It's their language, and I want to be part of that. And I'm chosen some other methods to study to be more fluent in it because it's a rich language of love and heritage and culture, and I want to have this part of my
Yeah.
vocabulary and thought process, and because it's important. And for me, all of this is, as I keep saying, is who I become on the inside. It's not about the exterior success. I look at my journey and where we are now after being nomads for a number of years. It's my new normal, and it
Mm.
feels damn good,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do this, to be able to travel and do things and just have these experiences. I mean, the simplicity of back in a town we've been in many times here, and it's got the best coffee we've found so far. We love going to the coffee shop because it's a nice
Yeah.
big cup of this, and we've been there 4 to 5 times. We've had an interesting conversation every time we've been there now. Somebody sat down and we end up in this amazing conversation, and we just
Yeah.
go, "Thank you."
Yeah. And I also just wanted to say, it's not always just being famous that you realize those aren't the things that are important, that the things of coming home to have the conversations, to have the familiar or not, or sometimes the familiar aren't your people either. Sometimes those are the people that are causing, you uncomfort. So to really be, don't complain about sunshine.
I know.
I'm in
There's
England.
no
It's
there's no curtains on this window I'm at where I'm in this office.
good.
There's no curtains.
Yeah, so we often look at people that are made it and how difficult it is for them. But even us who haven't yet or aren't going to make it in that way, in that, I'm famous, I don't want to be famous, I don't see any lure in it. But, even in our normal lives, we often allow others' opinions or others' perceptions of how life should be control and manage how we experience our lives. And that's where I feel there's such a buffer. Like how do we let go of them? Because they've got nothing to do with our journey most of the time.
I think yes, so often we are viewed with the judge, especially in families where some members of a family may be quite successful, and other members just aren't into don't have that's not their path.
Yeah.
And I think it's the family that has that level of acceptance, for each one to be inclusive with that. But some, again, but society judges because, how they want people to perceive them. And
Mm.
so much shame is attached to family. Like, don't you embarrass me. Don't you do that. Don't you do that. We have to live up to this expectations that it's all self-created.
Yeah.
And especially I think just for me, looking at how my siblings struggled, and I really would look at how do I find that inner happiness in me? It wasn't so much exterior to wealth, but I looked at unfortunately, their lack of being able to have that self-validation, and I chose a way to validate myself. And I think that's key. I don't look for outside people for validation. I choose my validation with my
Mm.
own set of competencies,
Yeah.
and
And
from
even
what
away
I
from that, isn't it? Because you're
say,
already enough, even away from those
oh, yeah,
validations, even if there isn't a self, even if we go and explore this concept of even validation of yourself is
mhm,
unnecessarily because there are
right.
no competencies that that separate you from being enough. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll put a different frame on that. When I was my journey of, and I don't want to choose the word healing, when I was just removing the heaviness that was in my life when I became an EFT practitioner. And I said, underneath all my stories, I say, there's a word in there that is true to ourselves, and it goes LOVE, love.
Yeah.
And when I found that within myself, there was peace because of all the stories were just that from my experiences that I created.
Hmm.
And I could connect and feel that sense of love of myself.
And
And
there's no
that's
judgment or validation or
no,
anything to
no,
do or achieve or any of that in the real concept of love,
right.
not in the
It's
one that you have to be good enough because you already
right.
are.
Because the world will tell you from the create, yeah, well, all those things that you're not enough. But I mean, as I said to you earlier, when somebody asked me a question, what would you tell yourself? And I would say, you've always been enough,
Mm.
and there is nothing, you don't have anything to prove to anyone.
No,
So it's just, there's a peace in that, that we can live our life with, for us, very simple experiences, because what it is, that the most powerful we're present. We're not trying to fix the past or project for the future. We're just very present. And so much time, we go for coffee, we go for a walk. I'm just observing my surroundings
yeah,
in the simplest form. And so a lot of my time is, and it's not, the Zen meditation. It's just, I experience life walking and looking, and I walk down by the lake, and I just see people, and through the cobblestone streets, through the stores, I'm experiencing presence.
And through that is connection. It's almost like
Yeah,
it feels like these outlines of our meat suit, as you mentioned earlier, um, becomes a little bit thinner, becomes a little bit
mhm.
less defined as to
Yeah,
we we are part of this environment because we chose this journey in some form or way, you know,
mhm.
a- and we continue to do so. And none of those choices are necessarily the right or the wrong ones. They are part of our flow. Because there's a lot of pressure on making the right choices, like,
See, this is why we both are aware of this when I talk with people and I work with them because we've been so conditioned about decision making.
mm,
You have to be decisive, but you have to make the right decisions. And how many times, it's, and the old example of children, just choose what you want for your snack and live with the consequences. You chose it and live, so we
yeah,
did, therefore we turn into what I call avoidance. When you create choices give you an example of experience. You can
mm,
always make another choice,
yeah,
because choices allow you to reach a path with those mini experiences that you're making choices, like I would say, decision points from or other choices. And in that, we're developing our sense of self, our sense of worth, and understanding our path of how we made those choices.
yeah,
How did you come to this conclusion or this choice? Well, I had this talk with, I had this talk with Michelle. We had some very interesting points, and I spoke with someone else, and they gave me some insights. And I was going here, then I talked to the person, but then what I made was my own discernment
mm,
and choice. And society doesn't want you to have discernment. They don't
yeah,
want you to have your individual choice. They want you to have consensus thinking. And for those of us, no, I'm going to make my choice of my discernment and where I go for coffee, what I want to eat. That's up to me, not from some brand marketing that I should eat their food or eat at their restaurant or drink their coffee.
yeah. And you mentioned something earlier, and I can't remember the right thing now, or just now you mentioned it kind of to choose the experience. And I think oftentimes we are conditioned to choose the outcome, instead of the experience.
Yeah.
So to choose the destination, and that destination changes all the time. So there's
Mhm.
always a level of I messed up, because it's not always realistic to want to do that one thing that isn't maybe even what your wants, but to focus on that experience, that journey of drinking the coffee and then either going, oh, that was really good, or no, that wasn't really good. But yeah, yeah, to move away from the outcome and to kind of experience the connection to the experience of the thing that you are doing. Um, because a lot of the times this fear of missing out is actually what keeps us in missing out, because we're missing out on experiencing where we are in this moment. And there is maybe nothing better than this moment.
Well, if you look at the externalization of that, I have to be somewhere, I have to be something, I have to be extravagant, I have to be seen, I have to be heard, influencers and things like that. Oh, I want to be like them. For many of them, their life is extremely hollow, very shallow,
Mm,
very narcissistic, So for those of us who can choose our life that without all the mediums and what makes us joy? Do you like to read? Are you a game player? Are you a card player? Are you a craftsman, an artist, a painter that you enjoy making crafts or something, or finding ways to do things with your hands and little social clubs? Are you a foodie?
yeah,
And those are experiences in there. There's connectivity, there's laughter, there's joy, there's support. I think, how many people grew up in family homes where the mother or grandmother are cooks, so the children learned to cook. And the
yeah,
support was there, this is how you try it for taste, and you have your own unique ability, and I think that's some people's favorite memories is baking with their parents, baking with family members, and the food quality or the food taste, grandma's favorite apple pie. So you had every time you've taken a piece of apple pie, that memory comes back. I remember
Yeah,
this with grandma. That's an
yeah,
experience, that'll be rich for you for until your life is no longer here.
yeah. And yet it is a joy, it is the connection point to the joy that you felt when you might have been with your grandmother or when you experienced that. So in essence, joy is the greatest rebellion or the greatest resistance to being conformed, to being controlled, to being, losing agency. Yeah, joy is the experience of the moment, which could be connected to other people or
Mhm.
moments with those people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I just made a comment in a post, like I talked about joy, and I said a lot of my joy is being present.
yeah,
I'm just here. I mean, it doesn't have to be a sparkly thing. It can be in that presence of it. Having your first sip in the morning, or having some pie or dessert or simple things, or suddenly someone sits down and you're having this very interesting conversation with somebody you've never known before.
yeah, yeah.
And you
Or
look back
spending time
and
with yourself,
yeah,
take yourself out to watch a movie or
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean. It doesn't even have to involve anyone else.
Mhm.
Because it's already there. As we said when we started, kind of, you don't have to go anywhere. There is no guru to follow. There is no theory or philosophy or, I mean, I love diving into them because I can, as you say, I can't remember the word you use, but take what I want from it and it
Mhm.
becomes mine. So I love seeking, but all those places of looking isn't which I'm, the ones I'm following. I'm not saying that there's one right way or that there's any way, but there is an experience in extrapolating little
Yes,
bits of each of those, if
yes.
you want
Uh,
to, or you can, there is no right or wrong, actually, and there is no one to follow to be a better you either.
I think, and I believe that because so many people say that, and your choice again, follow somebody,
Yeah,
a craft, a religion, or divinity, absolutely. But I've always, for me, looking at how does it fit for me, but I don't give my power to someone else. I don't give all my decision making to someone else. I look at theirs, and if it aligns with what I feel at this point, and I'm being authentic with me, that's my choice. So
and you
again,
have the right to change your mind.
yes, I
You
have
know
the
what I
right
mean?
to
In this
change my
point.
mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I had a long time, many decades mentor who was an avid reader. And he taught me many years ago, decades now. I said, when I was reading a book, okay, what did the book not say?
Yeah.
And it really made me inquisitory because he said, find other writers, other books of same parameters, and then start putting the pieces together. Who's saying what? Why are they saying what they're saying? And that gave me such insights to choose. Even in his mid 80s, he was still able to change his mind from reading relevant material that was maybe different, or he may not even liked it. But he said
Yeah.
it had some interesting points of view that he would say, "Oh, I didn't know that," which
Yeah.
allowed him to have a new perspective. And I think that's what we can always change our perspective.
And through that process, we get to see why other people see the world that they do. Um, like, my daughter's doing her GCSE exams, and it's always, why do I need to study this? Well, now you can understand how other people see this thing. Well, they do religious studies, for example. Um, if you don't know what other people how other people see the world, how are you going to connect with them? It's not
Mhm.
about the religion or the deity or the teachings or the whatever. I'm following a wonderful woman, and I don't even know what her name is. She's an older uh, I think she's from Saudi, and she lives in England, but she's fascinating. And she said she's read all the religious books, and that's why she doesn't believe in religion because, and the guy asked her, "Are you a Marxist?" She said, "No, I've read Marx. That's why I can never be Marxist. Not even Karl Marx was a Marxist, Um, it's just most of these things that people base their behavior in or their collective belonging, conformity in, isn't necessarily what it was created for. You know, it becomes a thing that is separate from others. It loses connection to the bigger picture. And that's what I'm always worried about, you know, the new thing to follow or the new thing to be. But who are you? You know, what are you taking from it? Are you involved in your own, not decision making, but choice making? Yeah. Do you see the bigger picture?
And most of that, or if not all of it, creates what I call silos. You're part of this group, so it's
Mm,
you're not that group. And I think this is again
mm.
all by design to keep people, constantly siloed in to believe what this little person or tells you, and you so you don't connect to the other people. You don't feel community. And I think overall people are realizing, especially I think you see through South Africa and Africa, they have been individualized in small communities by design and are tired
Yeah.
of it. They want to have the connectivity and ability to connect and travel across each other's, lands and country and
Yeah.
nations to because we're all the same people. And
Well, exactly. Animals migrate, people migrate. We are part of a environment. We're not, yeah, anyway, let me not go on a rant
right, right.
about
But again, we get so caught up in having again to be something, we forget who we are as a person that
Mm.
we love at times connecting with other people.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes us more us, you know,
Yeah.
if we only connect within these silos. And I'm watching, I don't know, I'm fascinated by human behavior and I'm fascinated by cognitive dissonance and how people are so attached to it, you know. They 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 want to see things through a certain lens because they think that is the only way, that's the right way. You know, you can have a Spanish man in a white suit with I can't remember what it basically with a big banner behind him saying love is stronger than hate, but he is somehow divisive. You know, he's
Yeah. Yeah.
somehow
Yeah.
he is the problem. And then you go, but yeah, you're not trying. You know, this is by choice. At some point, ignorance, especially in this world that we live in, there's access to many viewpoints. There's access to many lenses and places of connection. Yeah, to make a choice to be in your silo isn't always going to be beneficial to you.
Conditioning has pushed us there to silo to as we every man for himself so you
Mm.
end up being siloed to think you have to do it all yourself, and you have to be this self warrior, and the ability of connectivity, the ability of vulnerability, the ability of support offers so much because there's so many people who would be loving to help you and share their wisdom and knowledge if you were able to share yours with them.
Yeah,
And then because it's what creates this true leadership of yourself when you have that I only know so much, so I rely on these other people for their expertise as well. And then to that we create this. And
yeah,
but we are no greater than the whole. And it's not about living in pods, but my greatness is about because I'm willing to realize how much I I honor their skills, their knowledge.
mm,
And we are not better than any. We are all part of each other in this growth to have this experience. And I always say the best experiences I've ever had were at dinner tables or events where people sit down with food and conversations start. And it just opens up richness of dialogue because of where people are in their experiences. And none of us are any better than anybody else at the table. We're here
no,
as,
and this is this element of competition, you know, when we
yeah,
can eliminate that fallacy that we are here to compete with each other in any way,
yeah,
um, then we can connect. Because, I'm never going to be better than you because I'm never going to be like you. I can only compare apples to apples, and we're all different. So once we can, yeah, move away from that success ladder, I suppose, or, fear of missing out, if I must be better than you, otherwise, yeah, I'm not going to get anywhere. I don't understand it. Yeah.
When you read so many people, how people have spent their life working in a booth,
Mm.
in an office, selling or whatever, in a those little pod booths, and I realized that's they've been their career,
Yeah.
and that's why, and it's like, wow, what an experience it would be. Some would enjoy it, some would be it'd be like a prison,
Mm.
like, do I want to be in one of those? No, like, so
Mm.
it's because your life is what you can produce by your phone or your computer, it's in this pod,
Yeah.
and I,
Yeah.
it's not something I could do, but I mean, but again, I think a lot of people went into it because they thought this would be make a living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can't allow other elements of possibility in without letting go of what is is the path, of making a living. Because if I don't make a living, then I'm not good enough at this, and then,
Yeah.
everything will fall apart. So therefore, I need to stay in my lane and not look to the sides because,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is something that I think hopefully is being, those barriers are being broken down as we evolve
Mm.
as a species,
Right.
as a group, or a collective of meat suit,
Yeah.
um, you know, participants on a planet that's in this space, in possibly a huge, collective of other whatevers. We get so small as to, okay, just keep my eye flaps on and carry on going. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if we can look up sometimes and go, there's more. There's more to this experience, even
Mhm.
if it's in this meat suit in this moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Yeah. We will chat again soon.
Okay.